Stephen Richardson is recently filed, or at least as the front, a new class action lawsuit against Love is Blind and Kinetic and Delirium, the content producers. Can you break down what this lawsuit is, what a class action lawsuit is, and then what this lawsuit looks like?
Yeah. So Steven, who is on season 7, on September 18th filed a class action lawsuit in California. A class action is when you have a class of similar situated individuals who can make the same claim as you. So in this case, he is bringing the action on behalf of season 6. Yep, season 6 through to date, and it's individuals. And then he also opened the door for other reality show contestants that would meet similar claims against these production companies, but primarily the Love is Blind cast members who would join. And he's the lead plaintiff. And his claims are similar as we've seen before in these actions involving Love is Blind and production. They are wage and hour. So in his complaint, he goes on to talk about the days that he worked and how he worked for, I'm only to get into whether this is
Yeah.
work. There were 20-hour days. And so 20 hours a day, I guess 7 days a week. Um, and you're getting a $1,000 a week stipend. So that's basically against a lot of labor laws. First of all, you can't even work that many hour days. But additionally, there are minimum wage requirements. The contract has to be interpreted in California law. So California's got a pretty high minimum wage. It's around 16.90. I checked last night, an
Mm.
hour. And then that's
I actually
minimum
thought it
wage.
was higher. I thought it was 20, but
Yeah,
that's it
maybe in
should be.
Los
Come on,
Angeles it's
California.
higher. I know, right? It's not very California-like. Um, but that just covers those first 8 hours of work. And then after that, you're entitled to time and a half of your regular hourly rate. So 1,000 a week would be a gross underpayment. So just that's the first part. So, and then he goes on to talk about the conditions of the workplace, which is a little bit novel. The prior lawsuits didn't go in as far as um, beyond wage and hour, whereas he's saying that this was just not a healthy work environment and not up to code because they were responsible for providing food and water and access to those things because you're on set living, you're basically in a living environment. But according to the complaint, he says he was like plied with alcohol, and then cast members are given very limited access to things like food and water. They're also stripped of their IDs and their phones, so they're not able to access the outside world, which is part of the experiment. But it gets hairy when you're you're considering yourself an employee, and then this is your job, and your job is taking away your phone and controlling when you can eat, when you can take breaks, when you can get fresh air, and giving you underpayments, gross
So
underpayments.
this is just brand new information to me. I'm wondering why it took so many seasons, because 9 just started, for someone to come out and claim this stuff and do something about it. It's crazy. It's not like this was happening in season 1 and 2. Being sarcastic, sometimes it doesn't come across. But
No,
what I
got you. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
pattern.
yeah, what I find interesting is there's, so what are we at now? 5 lawsuits, I think, right? We've got the original class action. We've got,
Yeah, we have Hartwell,
we have the Hartwell one,
Dang,
Dang. We
Posh,
have Poche, which is like a counter. Poche is the countersuing. Now we've got this one, and then we've got the
the
NLRB.
NLRB.
Okay, yeah, 5 lawsuits on one show. Like that seems crazy to me. And I kind of want to break down the differences in these suits a little bit too. But with this one, what I found interesting, this new one, is that it's making the labor claims, which I think is the baseline for Hartwell's original lawsuit. But it is interesting that he's adding kind of like the work environment stuff. Is there any? Because that's what's sexy. Let's just start there. I try so hard to make the NLRB stuff culturally relevant, but it's such a dense labor law is dense and it's super important and a foundation of our country and where we are right now. But like it's super dense. The
Mhm.
lack of food, all of the alcohol, the long hours of being filmed constantly, all that stuff. That's like a little more sexy for culture, I think, for pop culture. Does that have any legal ramifications in this class action from your opinion? Or do you think that it's really, really more about those labor hours?
Play in because it goes to the workplace safety and complying with just basic accommodations that should be provided in a workplace. And in this case, if this workplace is involves living there and having all meals provided, then they are required. There are certain amounts of breaks in a workday in addition to providing a minimum wage. You also have to provide at least like a 30-minute work break, and it has to come after a certain amount of hours worked. So let's say like 5 hours worked. So in this case, if you're under complete control over those who employ you and you don't get a say in when you get to break for food and when you can drink water, that also violates the law. And this case, as you said, there have been several before. I think that it's building on the momentum of all the cases that came before it. And for example, when he talks about being stripped of his phone and the credit cards, maybe that is more sensational than it goes to, let's say, wage and hour or labor law. But it ties in a little bit of what Renee Pochet's lawsuit was about, in that she felt like the contract was overly restrictive. So it brings in elements from prior, and of course, the wage and hour distinctions and labor law issues are all things we saw previously in the Hartwell original class action and then in the NLRB. Um, I think the main thing here is that we have a question of, are reality TV cast members workers, employees, or something else? The production would like to call them independent contractors. They would like to say that these are contestants who receive a stipend. Now, if it looks like a job and it acts like a job, the law very often is going to call it a job, whether or not your contract says very explicitly, this is not a job. The Love is Blind contract tells you, you are not an employee, you are an independent contractor. However, there are things that are in part of the experience that do sound like work, and they do sound like you should be provided certain protections because you are working. And that's going to be the ultimate question here. Is it a job or is it not a job?
I think that is a perfect place for me to add this caveat. So I was the first person to file an NLRB charge and spent several hours. What do they call that? It wasn't a testifying. They were my disposition or something like that.
Deposition?
Deposition. Yeah, yeah, yeah. See, this is how stupid I am when I'm like, I don't know any of this
You're
stuff,
not.
even though I'm like going through it.
Who would know this word if you didn't practice?
Right, right. Good point. So I went through this whole thing, and my whole point with that, taking your wallet, taking your phone, taking what that does for the labor claim is it takes away your autonomy and autonomy of a contractor. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of an independent contractor is you have the ability to work when you want and where you want, and that's kind of the idea. Whereas an employee, when you can't leave on your own accord because you don't have ID. And by the way, I didn't have ID when I was in a foreign country, and not just in the resort we were in for filming, but we were in a random like Hampton Inn in Cancun for 3 days in a
And you had
parking
no
lot.
idea. That's
No
crazy.
ID. That like no
Wow.
passport, no money, no credit cards. Like just to me, that was when I look back and I was like, that was really dangerous. And so
Yeah.
that to me, the position I take, and when I um, testify in my NLRB hearing, which is coming up early next year, that's the point I want to make is like the lack of autonomy makes you an employee because you literally cannot leave. And the contract also, at least my contract, I've heard it's changed. I haven't seen it change. I don't know if you've seen any newer contract. There's like a $50,000 in damages fee if you leave. And I believe
Hmm.
that's also part of Steven's case as well. But that lack of autonomy, like in your point of view, does that lean more towards like a proof point that you're legally an employee in your view?
Yes, that is a great point. That is actually part of a test that California and a lot of other states apply to determine whether work is considered regular employment or independent contractor. So that's a critical piece is whether you have the autonomy. Usually, autonomy is thought of in sense of autonomy to control the work that you do. So, for example, if you outsource a graphic designer on an independent contractor basis, you might give them a project and they're really going to do it. Let's say they have a deadline, but they're going to take care of that when they do and then send it back, even if it's within the deadline, versus an employee. You tell them, be here at 9, stay until 5, do this work within these hours. That's the difference between autonomy or not. Similarly, when you're on the show, besides for giving up your ID, you also have to remain where they tell you, for how long they tell you, and you can't really choose to come and go as you please. And part of that is by taking away, literally taking away all the things that will allow you to do so. But you are pretty much under their control and you don't have the autonomy. Another thing that they look for is whether you're doing the core business of what the work is. So here they're producing a show. Cast members are participating in the show. It's the core business versus, for example, a let's say an office hires an outside electrician or plumber. That plumber, as an independent contractor, is doing his plumbing work or electricity work. They're not doing the core business of what your, let's say, accounting business is doing. That's a key distinction. In this case, you can't really separate what the cast is doing, participating in this love show, from the core purpose of the business, which is producing this love show.
Thank you for listening to this clip from the full episode of Eyes Wide Open. Please like and subscribe for daily clips and new episodes that drop every Tuesday. I appreciate you.